Obviously, Alex True was the guy who got taken. Did that surprise you at all? And how does that affect the organization as a whole?
Well, you knew coming in that you're going to lose somebody, and I give Alex a lot of credit because much like, for example, Barclay Goodrow, he came in as an unsigned player. He's worked extremely hard. I think Seattle certainly sees something in him similar to what we see in him. The coaching staff, the Barracuda, and everybody that's put a lot of work into this for Alex to get to this point and get selected. It's mixed feelings. I mean, a big body. We think he's just coming into his own, and but we knew, as I said, would lose somebody. I think Seattle did their homework, and they got a good player.
Obviously, there was a chance that you were going to lose someone that maybe had a greater salary, whether it was a Simic or even a Gambrell. With all of the stuff coming up in the next couple of weeks, you've told us what you want to accomplish with the roster. Do you have to still move money out in order to achieve everything you want to achieve with the roster?
No, but you do have to explore, some creativity. I mean, there's different areas that we said we were going to address. Goaltending, we've already started to address that. Obviously, we're looking to add a couple of forwards that can play in, as we say, the men's roles. Where it's sometimes last year we put some kids in some roles that was probably a little bit much for them, but that was part of the reset and replenish. We're looking to add some players that I think can take our competitive level to the next level, and also allow younger players to flourish, playing with some veteran guys. But no, we'll be able to add some pieces. We continue to have discussions and look into that.
With the expansion draft, was this just a matter of you guys were going to just go into it and lose whoever you were going to lose? You weren't interested in any sort of side deal or trying to get them to take someone else. It was just you lose someone and move on.
Well, we have all those conversations. If you take a look at the philosophy and the approach that Ronnie took with Seattle, I think you can see that he was building his team. He's got some young players. He's got some big D men. But I don't think he's finished in how he's going to craft that team. So a lot of us had conversations, I'm sure, around the league with maybe trying to move money or explore contracts and creative deals, but that didn't take place in many cases here.
Hey, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you, Shane.
Okay, awesome. Doug, you mentioned looking to add a couple of forwards. When we talked to you in May, you specified that you guys were looking for a 3C. So now is, I guess, what you're looking for, would it be accurate to say that you're looking for a 3C and perhaps a winger?
Yeah, we've got guys that are pretty versatile in their roles. But I identified the center position, much like the goaltending position, that we wanted to address, and we continue to do so. And there's different avenues to do that, whether it be trade or free agency. But I think adding a veteran aspect to that is something that I've mentioned to you before. There's getting a quality guy that can not only help the leadership group, but also play the right way and send a message for the young guys that, yeah, there's going to be opportunities. They're going to have to come in and compete for those spots, though. Where last year they were given those opportunities for long periods of time. Come September, we want to have a very competitive camp, and we want to get right back at it. And we think that's the best way to do it, is by having that type of competition.
And you said before that it's difficult to judge this season, obviously shortened because of the pandemic and a lot of reasons like that. But what I guess has given you the confidence from this past season to add to this team that missed the playoffs?
Well, I think if you take a look at games like 21 through 40, we actually played some pretty good hockey. The first couple of months, really tough for me to honestly evaluate the group with what everybody had to deal with. No exhibition games, being out of market for as long as we were, playing 15 or 16 of our games on the road. But then we played some pretty good hockey. We ran out of gas, I think, the last last little while. And I know how the guys have responded. I mean, I'm in here today looking, I see Mario Ferraro in the gym. I see Eric Carlson there. I see a Banker in there. I see Ozzy. Every guy I've reached out to is using this time to get ready and do the things that they can do to get ready come next September. They weren't able to do that last year. And, it was very disjointed. It's not excuse making. I have to deal with realities that the group had to go through. But I think when you have character people that you believe in, they're going to come back ready to go. And our top guys in particular, I think, are excited about the opportunity.
And just to clarify, those four names you mentioned, Mario, Eric, they're all in San Jose working out, or?
Yes.
Oh,
yep.
Okay. And I'm not sure if there's going to be announcements about this later, but just in general, in regards to today's expansion draft, were you surprised that there seemed to be no side deals?
I'm not sure that there weren't any side deals. I think that'll be fleshed out in the next couple of days. I know there was the show tonight and the announcement today of the team, but I know there's been ongoing discussions, and there might have been some deals or some draft picks or things that could clarify themselves the next day or so.
Okay, but none involving the Sharks.
No.
And now the expansion draft is over. Can you say anything about Martin Jones's status? Will he be bought out?
Well, no, we're still exploring our goaltending situation, and we haven't made any decisions at this point. We will have to in due time. We certainly went out and added Aiden Hill, and he was a focus for us because of the type of goalie he is, the age group, where we think he's going, and his style of play. But there's no doubt that we'll continue to look at our goaltending and our situation and make those choices in the next week or so.
Guys, thanks for doing this tonight. We appreciate it. Doug, can you say we saw some teams expose some players with longer, more expensive contracts? Was there any temptation on your part to maybe expose a player along those same lines to maybe keep a younger player, to not protect a younger player?
Well, I think, the conversations that I have with Ron Francis and Ricky Olczyk are kept in confidence. We kind of knew the direction they were going to go and what they were looking at. Looking at our team, the players that fit for them were the ones that were made available. They made a decision with a young forward. It's the same conversations I think they had with the majority of the other teams, where even those teams that did expose high-end players with longer-term contracts, they were not in fact claimed.
A question I'd like to ask all of you, if you don't mind. How good do you think the Kraken are going to be?
Go ahead, Berkey. Dougie, I'll finish it off.
I think they'll be pretty good. They did a good job. No, I think they'll be pretty good. I don't think they're done yet. I think they're still going to make some moves that'll probably show up in the next couple of days, but I think they did a good job.
Dougie, your thoughts?
They built their D similar to what Ron Francis did in Carolina before, so they have a little bit of an archetype for that. And as we were watching it, they picked 4 players with Sharks roots that we know very well: Blackwell, Donskoy, Yanni Gord, and Alex True. And what I can say about those 4 guys is they're all heart and soul, hardworking type players. And so we were really happy for all of those guys. And if that's the model they're going to go, then they're going to be hard to play against every night. So they might not have chosen the highest names out there, but of the players that they drafted that we know personally, they're going to be a heart and soul, hard to play against team. So that'll be tough.
And I think, as Berkey said, I don't think they're finished building their team yet. They certainly have the benefit of coming in new, having cap space that they can do certain things and be creative other teams can't be. But I think the excitement of their city, the quality of their staff, Ronnie Francis has put together, I think, an outstanding staff. So I think they'll be a very good hockey team.
Yeah, Berkey, this is for you. I wanted to ask a question. You guys have never drafted a goalie in the first or second round, I believe, and there's a couple goalies coming up in the draft that are pretty highly rated. Do you guys take a look at those guys? Can you say anything one way or the other if there's interest there, or just maybe the organizational philosophy when it comes to drafting goaltenders?
No, we look at them every year. We look at the goaltenders like wherever we are in the draft. I mean, we try and predict, what guys could go in certain areas, and we look at them very closely. It's easy to say that, like, with a Carey Price, if we're picking in the top 10 that year, we're probably really considering him. Mm-hmm. I think we're at a little different place in the organization right now. And we're high in the top, top 7. We haven't been in a while, so we're looking at everything, but like, it's not a priority.
And Doug Jr., I guess I'll follow up with you here. Obviously Doug's made it clear that you guys are in the middle of a reset, and maybe there's some comparisons to be made with Montreal there. And Montreal, we saw them have some some good young players like the Suzuki's and Caulfields come up and really contribute. So just in that sense, how important is it that you guys find a true future NHL player at that 7 spot that can maybe contribute sooner than later?
Yeah, I think it's always important. The good thing is historically when we picked 7 to 10, I think we've actually gotten the second most NHL games out of anyone in the last 10 or 12 years. Picking Logan Couture and Devin Setaguchi and then even lower, Tomas Hertl. So we haven't had a lot of swings at top 10 picks, but when we have, we've done well. And this draft's interesting. There's forwards, there's D, there's goalies. So you're not just comparing, 4 forwards or 4D or 2 or 3 goalies against each other. You're comparing all of them. And, something that we talk about is that usually when we're picking so low, you're hoping that someone falls to you, as opposed to being in the situation where we are this time, where we actually get to choose the player that fits. So I wouldn't say that we're looking specifically for a player that can help us in, sooner than later. We're just looking for the best player available that kind of bodes in well with, the Ozzy Weissblot, Thomas Bordelos, and then, the young guys, Timo, Hertl, Cooch, Ferraro, etc. So just, I think it's a really good opportunity to get a guy that blends in with our core group, our younger players, and our recent draft picks. So that's kind of what we're looking for.
Hey guys, thanks for doing this, and it's good to see you again. Berkey and Doug Jr., if you could speak a little to, again, the challenges this season of evaluating the prospects when, you had such limited numbers of games and travel was restricted. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges and how confident you are that you have a firm grasp of what it is that's available out there?
Yeah, I think our staff, the good thing we have going for us is that we've had quite a few new scouts come on recently, but our group, our core group has been around for a long time, and we all trust each other very much. So the area scouts were able to go to their own areas. So our Western scouts could go to games in the West, our Quebec scouts could go to games in Quebec, our European scouts could go to games in their respective countries. Myself and Berkey were able to travel and fly around to go to different games live. So at the end of the day, the only players this truly affects are, maybe 2nd to 7th round OHL players that didn't play at all. And usually that's about 31 players. So you take out about 6 or 7 OHL players going in the first round that found themselves in Europe, etc. And the draft with no games at all is really only going to affect about 20 to 24 guys, 5% of the draft. So with that being said, with the amount of video that we have, the research and development team we have, the resources Hasso gives us from SAP, and the resources we have internally, I feel very comfortable going into this draft.
Chris.
Doug, are you pretty set at picking number 7, or would you be open to moving down if it meant getting more picks? Obviously, you guys don't have a pick in the 2nd round, whereas of now, are you set at number 7, or are you open to moving down?
I'll tell you Saturday. I'm just kidding. You don't want to share your strategies. You always look, at getting the best player in the draft. And Berkey and Dougie have done an outstanding job of preparing us for this. And we know that, sitting at 7, we're going to get a difference maker. We're going to get a talented guy. Now, there are some guys that certainly go beyond that number too. So depending on how things fall, do you explore moving back a little bit? Potentially, you always do. You want to get full value from your draft selections. But I think, as Dougie mentioned, there is some really quality guys in the range that we're in. I think it's the first time in 18 years or 17 years that we've drafted this high. And it just so happens to fall on the draft that it is at least 8, 9 players deep. So we'll see how it all unfolds. Every team has a different plan on what they're looking at, and I don't think anybody can predict exactly how it's going to fall, but irregardless, we know at 7 what we're going to get, the quality of player we're going to get. If we can get that quality of player and add a pick or two, you certainly explore it.
For Berkey or for Doug Jr., where does the strength of this draft lie? Is it up front? Is it on the blue line? Where do you see the strength of this draft right now?
I don't think it, you really couldn't say. It's not like there's certain years where you can really say that. We've looked at this a lot for a long time this year. Not dodging the answer. There really is, there's no answer to it. You can't really say it. I mean, you could go back in other years, like you could say it was heavily front-ended with defensemen or with certain position. I think I don't see that.
The feeling is that maybe there's a consensus number 1 and Owen Power, but then it's a mixed bag after that, kind of a crapshoot. Is that how flexible, I guess, do you have to be going into Friday?
I don't know if it's such a crapshoot, to be honest. I think that there's a really good group of players at the top. And the good thing is it's very versatile. Like there's all sorts of positions. We're talking left wingers, centers, right wings, defensemen, goalies, etc. Like Berkey knows, and as he mentioned, it's not like we're looking at 4 forwards and trying to compare 4 forwards and or 4 defensemen and just looking at 4D and saying who's the best one. You know, the top 10, 11, 12 guys, whatever it is, they literally cover all the positions, and there's multiple guys at multiple positions. So I think that, you know, might represent a little bit of opportunity because we'll take best player available, but our staff's, you know, you're comparing a defenseman to a forward to a center, etc. And it's just a really versatile draft. So I think the one thing is when we show up on Friday, in most scenarios, we have a board for ourselves and we have a board for the league that is usually pretty spot on for where guys are going to go. There could be some movement in this draft that could be very interesting. You know, guys being drafted off 8 games, guys being drafted out of European leagues when they're American players or something. So I think there's going to be a little bit more movement with the versatility of positions and the variance of games players have played. So I don't think it's a crapshoot. I think it's just some really good players in our range, and we're just trying to sort out what order they're going to go, so we have our options.
I know you just said that, you know, you picked the best player available. I know that last year, though, you seem to restock the cupboards with a lot of forwards. Do you lean D-man if considering you've already got some promising young forwards in the pipeline?
No, I chose best player available. That's the strategy that we take. And last year, I think we mentioned after the second round, we did have some D on our board, and they didn't fall to us. And then I don't want to reach for a defenseman that we might have a 7th round grade on in the 5th round just to get a defenseman. So as you can tell, I think in the last 4 or 5 years, we're very picky with certain types of players. I think we've only drafted 4 defensemen in the last 5 years with Mario Ferraro, Ryan Merkley, Santeri Hitaka, and Artemi Niazev. And we're really excited about those guys. So I don't think we lean any way. I think we have a strict filter that we go for, and we just stick to that. So I'd rather go quality over quantity anyway.
This question for Doug. So of course you guys have your 7th pick, but then your next pick is, I believe, 71. You know that you don't want to reveal too much of strategy, but is there a particular focus in terms of trying to get into the 2nd round, or is it just, you know, you're pretty happy with the picks kind of where they're at, and there won't be a particular focus in trying to get into the 2nd round?
Well, you always explore filling out your grid, but we think with the 8 picks that we have and the uniqueness of this draft, and I think Dougie said it very well. I mean, we know we're going to get a difference maker in the top 7. There's no doubt. The other picks and some of the players that maybe not have played as much as in a normal year during what we've gone through, you're going to be able to pick and choose some players that might not normally have fallen into some of those rounds that we're talking about a little bit later. Obviously, I'd love to have picks at the top of the draft, but we've always had very good success in middle rounds, later rounds, etc. And I know the work that these guys have put in. I think while it's a challenging year, much like last year's draft was, I think there's great opportunities that come out of that. And our guys have always done a lot of their work on underage players too. So they've got, I think, more information than a lot of organizations. I know the work they've put in, the Zoom calls and getting to know the character of these players. So we know coming in with 8 picks, if we add more picks, great. If we move up or move down, we will. But I think they've always done a good job of forecasting where we need to be to get certain players. And if we can do that, we will.
And this one is for Doug Jr. So a couple of years ago, you mentioned that your draft list was a little above 90 guys. And then last year you had a 131, speaking to the depth of that draft. So can you say what your final draft list, the number is this year?
So our what I'll say is our final draft this year was just over 100. I think we added some extra players because what's interesting is the players that didn't play this year, it's in hockey, a lot of the college players, they come in with their physio being in great shape, right? From Monday to Thursday programs and minimal travel on the weekends. The major junior players that didn't play, the best ones, they didn't necessarily sit around at home. They trained and put on muscle and worked out and worked on their skills. So just because a guy hasn't played this year, I wouldn't necessarily say that he hasn't improved. So our list is expanded a little bit to include those types of players that maybe they put on, extra weight, maybe they got faster, maybe they were able to work on their hands all summer. I'd say this year, if any, was some of the more intriguing background checks and Zooms that we've done, meeting kids and putting faces to names after not seeing them live in 6 or 7 months and kind of being shocked at what they've done in their free time. So I'm pleasantly surprised with the depth of this draft after being a little bit nervous going into it.
And I guess speaking to that, so some of these kids obviously did not play, or they, played in leagues where the video, maybe the video isn't great or whatnot. So was there something different that you may have judged a little more, like, soft skills from a couple of years ago, or you mentioned the Zoom interviews may have had a little more of a factor than they did last year?
Yeah, I would say our group has always been very strong in background checks. I have a lot of faith in our area scouts. They do an amazing job. So they were able to go to games, which is great. And Burke and I were able to do crossover and travel to other games. The Zoom isn't ideal. You don't get to be in the rink, meet the billets, meet the teachers, meet the GMs, talk to them, get that type of information. But I have to give our scouting group a lot of credit. They did a lot of digging. And I think our final count for Zooms was 183 players over 5 weeks, which was exhausting, but it was fun. And I have to give our scouts a lot of credit for the background checks. Our job isn't to just, watch on ice and take whoever scores the most points. It's really to get to know these people and who can help our culture and who can help us win playoff games. So, we're not trying to win the draft. We're trying to win the Stanley Cup. And I think our scouts do a great job of finding those guys.
And a question back to Doug. Logan Mayhew, he's asked not to be selected. Will you guys honor that request? And can you say if he was on your do not draft list before?
Logan's not on our board.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions here? Curtis.
Doug, you mentioned, obviously, like we were talking about the draft, the highest you guys have ever picked in 17 or 18 years. We got free agency coming up next week. We got some cap space to play with. Is this the next 2 weeks or so? Are these the biggest 2 weeks of the year in terms of trying to set this organization on the right path?
It's a good question. I think everything since the end of the year has been important. I mean, identifying, getting our players back in a training cycle, finding out that we're going to have a development camp in August, understanding and hoping, knock on wood when I say this, that we'll be able to have a normal training camp here in San Jose, having exhibition games. So there's a lot of things that, your player acquisition and your additions, absolutely. We've identified some things that we'd like to add to our group. And by the time this draft is over, we'll have added 20 pieces to our organization with last year's draft, this year's draft, and Prona and Barabana, for example, which fulfills the replenishment part of it. But just knowing that everybody's got to be doing their work right now. The players that I'm talking to are training hard, getting back in their cycle. They got to be on top of their game. Our best guys have to be our best guys. Yes, we're bringing some people in to make some changes. Historically, any time where we've fallen down, skinned our knees, and not had a year that met up to our standards, we bounced back because of the work that was done by everybody from the end of that season till the next training camp. So there's a lot of work to be done by everybody in our organization. Certainly the draft is important to add a difference maker and add 8, maybe 9 more players. Adding some players in free agency or in trade, that's important. So you add all those pieces together, all those puzzle pieces, and we're going to need to be good in all those areas. We need to have a great development camp. We need to have a great training camp. So this is kind of the start of next season already. And everything that we do have to me be done well to get us back to where we want to get to be to start off and have a really successful season, which we believe in our people, not just our players, but our staff. And we're looking forward to that challenge and opportunity.
Is everybody healthy right now? Like guys like Simic and Nieto, or those guys, if you guys had to start camp tomorrow, would they be good to go?
Yeah, I think everybody is pretty well there. I'm just thinking on the top of my head, Matty Nieto is just about back there. Yes. Everybody else, that's the one thing, using our time wisely. Some guys that at the end of the year, it wasn't just the physical challenges, but I think the mental challenges last year was really that everybody had to deal with. Our group needed some time, and health-wise, I think every one of them will be back in September, healthy, ready to go with nothing that really would hold them back in any way. But I think they'll be refreshed, rejuvenated, excited to go. Every time I talk to them, they look back at last year as nothing they've ever experienced before, and nobody was really prepared for what a pandemic brings, and especially in some of the guidelines we had to adhere to that was different than most other teams. Not an excuse, just a reality, and now it's what you do going forward. And I will say our group, I think, will be extremely excited come September. I do.
Thanks, guys.
Hi, Doug. I don't know that this is the right form for this, so I apologize in advance in case it isn't. Have you had a chance to look at the upcoming schedule and see that there's been an announcement of more mini series, or this idea of playing back-to-back games to lessen travel? The Sharks have obviously had their issues of finding time to practice. So have you seen the schedule and see the benefits that it can bring?
Yeah, I think, this past year had such an aberration to what anybody was used to, but especially for us as a team, starting all those games on the road. So it'll be back the normal divisions. It'll be back to better situations. As far as the specifics of that, I have to wait till the schedule's announced by the league. But I think you'll see with Seattle coming in and Vegas, our schedule continues to get better as more teams are out west. The issues that we always have dealt with is border crossings and things like that, especially when you're going through a pandemic. But we think this year, I knock on wood again when I say this, getting back to that normalcy and the routine of having the training, the exhibition, and a schedule that makes sense will go a long way to helping our team, because athletes and teams are a creature of habit. We certainly got out of that last year. Nobody's fault, just the way of the world and things we had to deal with. But I think getting back into those routines will be really important for our group. Scheduling being a big part of it.